Hello everybody, thank you for watching my channel. Today I'm going to talk about Omnipod 5, and the question is really what can you expect from it based on large scale data analysis. Now before I start my video, I want to highlight that at our university we're running a study on diabetes self-management. It's a simple survey people with diabetes or without diabetes actually can participate in. It takes about 15 minutes. If you're interested in that, please check the link below the video. We are particularly interested in gender differences, so we want that men and women participate, and we want to see and find out how men and women differ in the way the diabetes basically affects them. So now back to the topic of the video, the Omnipod 5. So if you watch this, you probably already know what the Omnipod 5 is. You probably have heard of it. It is a relatively new automatic insulin delivery system made by the company Insulet. It is a small tubeless pump. It is super easy to put on. It's waterproof, and you can even swim with it. So it's all great. But most importantly, it works together with your glucose sensor to automatically help you to have the best possible glucose values while living a fairly normal life with a normal diet. At least that's sort of like how I would see it. And you see on the plot above my head here, which I took from their website, where they show that there are various mechanisms that this system takes into account, where your glucose go up or down, and it learns from previous glucose values and so on. So it's great. Now there are lots of videos about that and how people actually use it on YouTube, so have a look at that. In this video, actually, I want to focus on something else. But what we see on YouTube is that there are videos of people managing really well with the Omnipod 5, and that's obviously great, and this is really, I really like that actually, because people share their experience. And what I find interesting is that some people report more than 90% in range, and that is really impressive, because we all know that it's actually not achieved such targets all the time. You might be able to do that, say, on a day, but maybe the next day things don't work so well. So what I'd like to do is to find out how common is it for people to manage a target of 70% and above. Now maybe you wonder, what are you talking about, time in range and so on. So time in range is actually some concept that we now use all the time in diabetes management. It is the time that people manage to have a glucose value between 70 and 180, or between 3.9 and 10 millimoles. Now for adults with type 1 diabetes, it is recommended that you're in that time at least 70% of the time. That is around 17 hours a day. Now, I say that is a general recommendation. I mean, of course, it varies from person to person. So that's something that you discuss with your medical team. But the general recommendation is at least 70% of the time. I made a separate video about that topic. Now, the important question of this video is this: how easy is it to get such a good time in range? And what about getting even, say, 80% or 90% of the time? Now that matters because if you meet someone and says, oh right, I do great with the Omnipod, I'm 90% time in range, and you can say, oh well, that's great, I want it too, because I'd like to have that too. And that makes sense. But the question is, do all people who get an Omnipod 5 manage that? And that's sort of like an important question, because with self-reports, you always in academia, you always ask yourself, how representative is that? Good, because that's really what I'm about, what I'm after. Now, at this channel, I like to look at these things from an academic point of view, and that is important because sort of like you could say a statistical analysis can help you to find out how many people manage a certain time in range. And this year there was a research paper carried out by people behind the Omnipod system. They got the data from nearly 70,000 people with type 1 diabetes from all age groups. And in this video I will look at their adult data, so the data from people of 18 and over. And in their study they had almost 50,000 people with type 1 diabetes. And that is a large sample. That's a very large sample for a research study. So that's actually really good that they published that. And it was in a well-respected journal. It is an open access journal, so I have the link below the video. So first I tried to find out, so what number of people achieve 70% time in range or better? And they have that in their table 3 if you look it up yourself. And it turns out that around half of participants in that study achieved that. Half. That means, 1 in every 2 people. And that means that for many people who have a regular diet, have just a regular daily life, it's actually not that easy to manage 70% or higher. And that's important because that's half. That's a lot. They also report the percentage of adults that achieved more than 80% in time, and for that it was 1 in 5 adults. And they don't even report what percentage achieved more than 90% in time, but I would not be surprised that is sort of like a minority. And that does not mean that you cannot achieve it. There are clearly people who do, and I really recommend you to look on YouTube for videos about it, because it's really interesting how people describe their personal experience, what they do. But it also means that if you get the system, it's not automatically the case that you will reach such a high target. And I think managing the expectations of getting this system is really important. And why is it that not all people achieve that? Well, that is because we're all different. We have different bodies and different ways our bodies respond, for example, to food, but also to other things, such as how exactly we respond to exercise, how exactly we respond to stress. And then on top of that, there are things like we live very different lives. I mean, different people live different lives for obvious reasons. It depends very much, for example, on the type of job you do. Some people are on the road a lot and they travel, and they might not have the chance to choose the foods that they'd like to choose, or they cannot know exactly what the carbs are in the food that they eat. And different foods, even with the same amounts of carbs, can have different types of glycemic responses depending on the other ingredients of the food. And I have a paper about that topic if you're interested in that below the video as well. That said, I also would like to say that even if people do not manage the 70% time in range, it still might be really good for them to have the Omnipod 5, as long as it is an improvement from the system that they used before, which might be MDI or it might be another pump system. So in those cases, Omnipod 5 is also a good choice. And in the paper, they showed that at least for people who were on an Omnipod Dash system before, there was an improvement when moving to the Omnipod 5. The bottom line, I think, is that if you're thinking of getting an Omnipod 5 or any other automatic insulin delivery system, I would be realistic with my expectations. While there are many people out there doing amazing things with the Omnipod 5, it does not work like that for all people. And of course, unfortunately, the paper cannot address why that is the case, because they in any academic paper you can only address certain questions, but it would take a more detailed, in-depth study for the researchers to find out, okay, why are some people doing doing extremely well with the Omnipod 5 whilst others are not. And there will be a whole different range of reasons, including how exactly people, it depends on diet, I suppose, and it will depend on, the accuracy of the data input into the system, because you still, if you have an Omnipod 5, you still should enter stuff like ideally what you eat and how many carbs you eat. At least that's my understanding of it. So I would argue that one challenge, even with smart insulin systems like Omnipod 5 and all the other new systems that you have, carb counting is really important. And the problem with carb counting is that it is not easy. It takes effort to figure out if you have different ingredients, and sometimes you just need to guess. And it's certainly not precise unless you're at home with a digital scale and with all the original packaging of the food you're eating. So it really depends. And that happens, of course, for many people. We are at home, but some people are on the road a lot. So that's an issue. But what if you have to go out a lot? What if you have that sort of a job? Then it can be hard to do the carb counting precisely, and I think that is a challenge even with these new systems, because no matter, even if you know perfectly well what your, say, insulin to carb ratio is, if you cannot know exactly how many carbs are in the food that you're going to eat, it's still not that helpful, right? So it is helpful to know that ratio, but if you don't know what you eat, you can't do much with that ratio. Then it becomes guesswork. And on top of that, as I said, different foods have different effects on blood glucose. So that's another issue. So now back to you. First of all, I'd like to ask you, what do you think? Are you thinking of trying to get an Omnipod 5? Or do you already have one? And if you don't want one, so why is that? Why would you not want one? Now, I would say again, before you make your decision, get the information. YouTube has lots of interesting videos. I hope that this is an interesting video. If you find this helpful, please like and subscribe, because then other people can more easily find this video as well. And I also have a disclosure to make. I should say I do not use an Omnipod 5 myself, but I have spoken to people who do. And I've spoken to the company representatives when I was at the Diabetes UK conference last April, where Omnipod was represented, and it's clearly a very impressive system, certainly worth considering. It's a great new technology, and in the comments below, let me know what you think, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye bye for now.